Hello, Haunted Family. Welcome back. Story 1. Phone Call from the Grave. This story may sound pretty far-fetched, but it's the truth. First off, I bought a house that used to be a church way back in the 18th century, and it's definitely haunted. After we moved in, strange things started happening. And one thing happened that I didn't know about for quite a while. My 16-year-old son was having a nightmare every night, and in the dream, it showed him a gravestone. And a voice would say, "Find this grave and you will know the truth." So he started going to the graveyards every day. I asked him what the deal with the graveyards were, and at first he was like, "Oh, Mom, I just like going out to them." This went on for a year, and then one day he said, "Mom, I think something in this house wants me to go crazy. I can't stand going to those graveyards. But I have that dream every night." And then he told me the dream. I told him to stop going, and the dreams will stop. So he did. And those dreams did stop. We thought that was the end of it. For 8 months, and then one day the phone rang. I said hello, but no one would answer me, so I hung up. My caller ID showed it was a long-distance call. Pretty soon the phone rang again. It was the same person. They still would not say anything, so my daughter came over. In a little while the phone rang again. I said, "Oh, it probably is the same person, and they won't answer." My daughter answered the phone this time. And she answered it by saying, "What?" And then she said, "I can't hear you. You need to speak up." And then she said, "Which Jim do you want? My dad or my brother?" She paused for a minute and said, "Just a minute." She laid the phone down. She said it was some weird chick for Jim. So she went outside, got her brother, and he came in. We got on the phone, and then his eyes got really big. He said he didn't know a girl named Tasha. He hung up and went outside. I called the number on the caller ID. It was a disconnected number, so I called the operator. She said that phone was out of order, but there was an alternate number that I could call. The place was a cemetery, about 70 miles away from where we lived. So I called the other number. A man answered. He said he was the groundskeeper and that no one was working with him that day. I told him that someone had called my house 3 times from another number that had been associated with that business. I told him the number, and he said that phone was located in the other office. It was out of service. No one could use that phone. I said, "Well, my caller ID and some young girl named Tasha has been calling from that number." He said, "Well, I don't know, except maybe someone from the grave wants to speak to someone at your house." I think the same thing. I went outside and told my son where the call came from, and he acted afraid and said, "I don't want to talk about it anymore." I asked him if he planned on going to that graveyard and checking it out, and he said no. Hell no. My daughter said the girl sounded like someone who was really spaced out, because all she would say is, "I want Jim," in a really weird voice. So all those dreams and then the phone calls, I would think the same thing if I was him. It freaked him out real bad. And something still bothers him. Sometimes at night, when he is going to sleep, he said it's like every time he just gets to that point of falling asleep, something taps on his shoulder and wakes him up. But no one is ever there. Story 2. The Haunted Apartment. I have a few, but I guess I'll tell you the apartment story, since it's the most comprehensive. This was during college. On Halloween, I took a pendulum to an old battlefield with my friends to try to communicate with spirits or whatever. It was all in good fun. After that night, crazy shit started happening in my apartment. The first time that something was going on was my keys, continuously going missing. I'd unlock the door, set my keys down, go about my business, and then they would just be gone. Even when I was alone in the house. I enlisted my friends once to search the entire house. We looked under everything. We moved furniture. We dug through couches. I had about 4 sets of keys go missing. Then, my door started slamming. I'm a skeptical person, so I tested everything. Checked the hinges, opened and shut the front door to the house to see if airflow triggered anything. Nothing. My bedroom door would just slam shut, ever so often. I left for a week on vacation. When I came back, my picture of Jesus that I kept on my dresser was on the floor, face down. And there were stab marks all over his face, like someone had poked holes through it. I took a storytelling class. Our assignment was to tell a ghost story. So I was practicing in my dining room, alone. A full bottle of water, sitting on the island, flung itself off the table violently. I had a friend move in with me, and after that, all the weird stuff just stopped. On my final day in the apartment, I had all my friends over as a final farewell to my first year in college. One of my friends was like, "Hey, what's this? There's something in your couch." And he pulled out my set of keys. Everyone immediately started feeling around the couch, and every set of keys that had ever went missing was in my couch. It was like my poltergeist was saying goodbye. Story 3. Unsettled. This happened way back when I was 11 years old. About 15 years ago now. My parents and I had moved from a small town to the city. We got a great deal, apparently, on a house on a hill with a great view. I remember the day we were moving in. The previous renters, a mom and son. The kid was close to my age. They were just finishing up moving out. I'll always remember the look on the mother's face. It just looked unsettled. Fast forward a few weeks. We had everything set up at this point. And the way the couch was set up in the living room, you could see the hallway to my parents' bedroom, as well as the laundry room out of the corner of your eye. Almost every time I'd be watching TV or playing a game, out of the corner of my eye I would see a shadow going back and forth between the two rooms. Almost constantly, whizzing back and forth. Later, my dad would tell me that he saw the same thing. And he didn't tell me at the time because he didn't want to freak me out. Me being a little kid and all. And that was mainly the extent of it for some time. But it was all the time. I got used to it. The best you can get used to something like that. And sort of thought of it as my buddy, the ghost shadow. I remember talking to it out loud and constantly asking it not to scare me. It was fine, and we lived with it, and time passed. About a year later, my parents got divorced. My dad left to live elsewhere, and I stayed there with Mom. My mom used to work at a restaurant, and I would stay home alone until 11 p.m. One night, around 10 p.m., I was watching TV, and I just had this weird sense that I was being watched. The hair on the back of my neck started standing up. You know that feeling. All of a sudden, almost instantaneously, As I got that feeling, I looked into the window. You know, when you can see someone in the reflection of a window? Well, that's what it was. Except in the reflection, all I saw was a shadow inside the room, about 8 feet behind me. These panes of glass were huge too. So I saw what looked like to me a silhouette of a human. I looked at it for what seemed like a long time. But really it could have only been a few seconds. I don't remember. I looked away to comprehend what I just saw. I didn't move. I didn't take my eyes off the TV until my mom got home, because I was sure I didn't want to see anything else. My mom's experiences were a bit more startling, and she didn't tell me until I was older, as she didn't want to add to any terrifying feelings I had about being left alone. I was at my dad's for the night, and she was sitting on that same couch that I was when I saw the shadow. Apparently, using her words, her Lady of Shalott picture lifted off the mantel, which was in the living room, stood mid-air for a split second, and then fell to the floor, glass down. I remember the night because my mom called my dad, and we had to go visit Mom late at night, and my parents stayed in bed together. I assume Mom was pretty scared. We eventually found out, to our surprise, that the original owners of the house was the then landlord's uncle. He was apparently very disgruntled towards women, and where we would constantly see the shadow moving back and forth between the laundry room and the hallway was the area where he had his workshop set up before they remodeled that area of the house. We also found out that he was found dead in the house right next to the area where I saw that shadow. On another twisted note, when we were moving out of the house, the landlord asked my mom in front of me, "So, did you see him?" Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, drop me a comment down below. And as always, thanks for listening. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.